Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. And unfortunately, PK has not been able to join us yet. I know she had some medical things to attend to regarding her back. I know all of you have been listening for a long time, know that that's been going on for a long time. But anyways, I'm here. I'm hoping she'll show up later and enjoy our guest because we've got a remarkable guest tonight. We have never had a show on this topic before. And lucky for us, he's got a great publicist who contacted us and said, "This is a great guest. You've got to have him on the show." And of course, we said yes. So let me tell you a little bit about who we have tonight. We have F.K. Sterling. He is a writer and an independent researcher whose work examines the intersection of history, science, and unexplained phenomena. Raised in the Ozarks, Sterling developed an early interest in regional folklore, ancient mysteries, and the stories that persist at the edges of accepted knowledge. Sterling's earlier work examined anomalous experiences and local legends, including long-standing reports of unidentified aerial phenomena and cryptid encounters in the American heartland. These projects laid the groundwork for a broader inquiry into how myth, environment, and biology intersect, an approach that culminates in his new book, In Search of Giants. Great cover. And he's with us tonight. We are going to get all the dope on this. This is a big story. Heard lots of rumors for a long time. FK, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
Well, let's start out with how in the world you got involved with the topic of giants.
Well, when I graduated from Arizona State University a few years ago, I began to research ancient mysteries. I was very fascinated by the work of Graham Hancock and
Yes.
Nick Redfern, Freddie Silva, David Childress. You know, I was one of the big fans of Ancient Aliens, and so all that really fascinated me. You know, as an academic, you're really not supposed to go down that rabbit hole, but I was fascinated by it, and I was willing to take a risk and question the unknown and see if there is other possibilities other than the narrative, the story we're given by academics and by the mainstream media. So I ended up doing a little research, and as I did this research, I came across some references in one of Childress's books on giants. So then I started researching multiple authors who have written books on giants, and I started to try to develop my own take, if you will, on what giants were and get my own theory out there, my own synthesis of what I believe were the giants. One of the things I want to be clear on is there's not just one group of giants. People ask me all the time, are giants real? Were there really these 12-foot giants? Well, I believe there were many different types of tall statured individuals and creatures and beings. I mean, Sasquatch is just one of them. Hey, I live in the Ozarks, and we have a very strong Bigfoot tradition here. And we don't just have that. We have many cryptids. We have the Blue Man. We have the Lake Monster. We have all of the Ozark Howler. So we have a lot of really strong cryptid traditions as well. So I think as far as giants, there are multiple examples throughout history, as recorded in our mythology, of tall statured individuals. One of the most strongest argument I have is that there were, like it says in the Book of Mormon, I'm a Mormon, by the way, and we have in the Book of Mormon the Jaredites, and they're not described as literally 12-foot, 13-foot giants, but they're mighty men, they're strong men, they're big men, and they're very sophisticated. They have a sophisticated civilization that existed just after the flood. So I started to really look into pre-flood and also pre-Adamic legends, and started to come up with the idea that there was a sophisticated pre-flood and pre-Adamic civilization of large people, larger than the 5'5", 5'6" individuals that existed in ancient times, who might have been 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", maybe even as tall as 7 foot, who might have filled the description in many cultures of blonde and red haired giants, fair skinned, who brought culture and civilization to early peoples throughout the world. And so I started analyzing this and coming up with some very strong ideas.
Mm.
Zohar, which is a Kabbalistic Jewish tradition, and also the Talmud, that has a lot of references to cyclical times before Adam, when great beings walked the earth. And also in Quranic tradition, the Quran talks about the jinn, and that's linked to even pre-Quranic, pre-Abrahamic Arab tradition of a group of people who were born of smoke and fire, and who were asked to bow before humanity, yet refused and were punished to walk the earth and serve man.
Now, let me ask you a question, FK. We've heard a lot about red hair giants. Is that a predominant characteristic that you found in your research?
Yes, very much so. I mean, even when you look in China, in Japan, you have a combination of the fair skin and red hair seems to be predominant. And there's reports of very tall, red-haired mummies in New Guinea, by the way. And that's a large
Oh,
Melanesian population, but
that's
they were
strange.
found in the mountains of New Guinea in the early 20th century.
Hmm.
Red-haired mummies who were in that range, around 6'6", 6'8" tall mummies with red hair in New Guinea. And so you have a lot of that. Red hair predominantly, but often sometimes blonde. You'll know on the front cover of my book, you have a blonde giant.
Hmm. Right. It is interesting, though, the red hair, because isn't red hair considered a recessive trait for the
Yes,
most part?
and one of the interesting thing is Neanderthals were ginger haired, and that trait has been passed down through our mixture, the European admixture with the Neanderthals and other peoples who mixed with Neanderthals. That red haired trait has been passed down through the millennia from the
Hmm.
Neanderthals. Also, green eyes, freckles, things like that nature were all common among Neanderthals.
Well, we've also heard stories about giants who were cannibals
Yes,
that cannibalized people
The
of small
Paiutes,
stature like us. And then we've heard friendly giants existed also that
yeah,
coexisted with people on the planet. It's a mix. We often find this even with Bigfoot. Got the
yeah.
nice Bigfoot, and we got the nasty Bigfoot that wants to eat our children. So yes, there seems to be that same dichotomy there in the giant community.
Yeah, with when you think about the Paiutes, who are indigenous Americans, I've always considered the possibility that they just were very envious of the great technology that the red haired giants had, and they envied it so much that they eventually exterminated them. And because they won the war, they then vilified them to justify the genocide. And
Hmm.
I think that that was the case with the Paiutes. I don't think they were really cannibals. I think they were probably superior culture bearing, bringing a culture to the Paiutes or the ancestors of the Paiutes. Those those indigenous Americans genocided the red-haired giants and then later on spinned it to make it justified.
Hmm.
That happens, like I said, the victors always write history. and sometimes we have to take what is said with a grain of salt.
Now, there was a story also, and you probably have heard it, and I wonder if there's truth to it, about soldiers being sent to Iraq. I believe it was Iraq to get rid of a giant there. So this thing was apparently quite enormous, but there were some witnesses who came forward and talked about how it was transported after death. Have you heard that story?
A little bit. I'm kind of skeptical, really.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know if
I'm
it's true or
very,
not, but
yeah, I'm
it's
very skeptical about that.
yeah, it was an interesting story. But
Because
that's
if a
not
creature that
impossible.
big existed, it can't hide very easily. More people would see it. It's not like a UFO which can then immediately dash away. Just zoom away and disappear into the space. I mean, a huge giant that's 20 foot high and lumbering across the landscape. People are going to see it. There's going to be footage. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. To me, it sounds like sensationalism.
Do you think that there are still giants living on the earth today?
I think the most biggest possibility of giant like creatures would be the descendants of proto humans now in the form of wild men and Sasquatch.
Hmm.
And I have heard reports about a creature in Antarctica, by the way, who I call Homo borealis, who is
Good name.
yeah, so I have linked it to the Denisovans because they were actually in that region of South America when the sea level was much lower, 50,000 to 500,000 years ago, which was a period at the height of the Denisovan population. Now, there wasn't a land bridge, but it was very easy to cross from South America to Antarctica. And Antarctica was much, much warmer at that time. It wasn't the inhospitable land we have now. Now, when it got colder, I would assume that if such a creature does exist, that there was evolutionary convergence. And through over time, it developed certain characteristics to keep itself warm: blubber, thick fur, um, probably white, light colored eyes, and a very different, almost, um, an Arctic version of Sasquatch, to be true. And
Mhm.
I think it's a very big possibility that this creature actually exists.
Well, it's certainly been given a lot of credit for some of the disappearances in our national forests. So there are a lot of stories about people disappearing and having something to do with Sasquatch, and not the fun kind, not the nice kind.
Yeah,
So, yeah, there's a lot of people that have gone missing, children that have gone missing that were looking for huckleberries, which seems to be something that they like to eat. So
yeah,
whether, who's to say? I guess it's a very difficult question to answer. And it's especially difficult, I think, because museums have hid a lot of information about skeletons of these giants, right?
yeah, yeah. And my friend Todd Neese, my colleague actually, he's a well known eyewitness and researcher. And he believes that the Sasquatch is a hominin and is a proto-human. It's within the family of man, and that over time it has evolved a taller stature, but is highly intelligent. And
Mhm.
I for one agree with Todd. I
Mhm.
believe I believe this is not just an animal. I believe it is highly intelligent. Therefore, it is able to be evasive and keep itself without being detected.
Right. Well, there's big differences between giants that look like huge males and females and
Yeah,
Bigfoot. There's a
yeah,
lot of differences there.
yeah.
But so you're saying that they are different, they are separate.
Yeah, there are multiple forms of giants, just
Mhm.
like there are multiple forms of dinosaurs or whatever. There are different forms of human species, different forms of life forms, just like there's different forms of extraterrestrials. I don't believe there's just the grays. I believe that there's Nordic extraterrestrials, draconian extraterrestrial reptoids. There are multiple types. Uh,
Yes.
and we live in a very diverse universe of many
Mhm.
mysteries and unknowns.
So it's clear that people are still having Bigfoot sightings
Yeah.
across the world. But what about giant sightings? Have you been following any of that? Where there's a giant
Yeah,
that
there was a report in India a number of years ago that a huge skeleton was found, and it had a tablet with it, a large stone tablet. And it was actually like almost like a block of stone that had an ancient Vedic inscription on it, and this being, these bones were found by both the American military and the Indian military, and that later
okay?
on the bones were collected, and the Indian military gave it over to the Americans for safekeeping, and they took it back to the United States in hiding.
Why hide this though, FK? What's your theory on this? Why are they trying to keep this information from the public?
Well, the easiest explanation is that the powers that be want control. They want control over the narrative. They want control over what we think the world is. That way,
Mhm.
they can easily manipulate us. If we knew the broad perspective, a way the world really is, how dynamic it is, how diverse cultures really are, how there's people and beings in space beyond our imagination, that would decentralize the importance of leaders and people who are in control. And it would also question a lot of the religious and spiritual beliefs that have been the glue of our society. And I think there's a certain level of paranoia there that would unglue that. And
Mhm.
that's the only thing that I can really wrap my mind around. But the government does things all the time that you just ask, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
You know,
What are they
they
hiding
all
now?
the time that
Yes.
beyond me that isn't logical, and they just think they're doing the right thing, and they don't think they're answerable to anyone. And
Well, they're
frankly,
not.
they are. They're answerable to us, but they
They
don't.
should be. Yeah, it would be nice, but they certainly are not.
Yeah.
And there we just have I have so many questions about these giants and if they're still alive, because we know about the bones that have been discovered and hidden. The museums go way out of their way to make sure nobody ever sees them in any exhibit. But I mean, we don't really know much about their culture, their society, their way of life. I mean, were they tribal?
Well,
Were they
when
loners? I mean, what were
like
they?
for instance, when you look at the legends like Atlantis or Thule or Lemuria, this is where I think the giants had their strength, their basis. Because
Oh,
like in the ancient Greek tradition, giant comes from the name gigantes, which means earthborn, and they were linked to Atlantis early on. And I believe the founders of Atlantis were giants, and the lost civilization, the same lost civilization you hear Graham Hancock speak about all the time,
mm,
were not
mhm.
only a forgotten chapter in our history, they were ruled by giants who later passed on what they knew in the post flood period to a surviving remnant of humanity. There was in our genetic history a period where there was a massive extinction of humans, that we know that humanity almost was wiped out. And that's
Right.
clear in genetics. And I believe that the giants were a separate group. They were a subrace of humanity. And
Mm,
I also linked them to the elongated skulls
Oh,
Paracas that Brian
okay.
Forrester investigates.
What's the link?
With they have large heads, they have large brains, they have European DNA for the most part, and they have red hair. The ones that do still have hair. So I kind of link them to this tradition of uniquely tall, robust, highly technologically sophisticated people in remote antiquity who were the harbingers of a lost civilization.
They could easily still be living underground. Yes?
That's right. I mean, the Hopi and the Zuni of the the Pueblo Indians have traditions of the ant people,
Mhm.
and it's their tradition that there were a group of people who were beneath them. They weren't called ant people because they looked like insects. They were called ant people because they lived underground like ants. But they
Mm.
were highly sophisticated and they brought the indigenous peoples beneath when there was a great catastrophe, sheltered them, and then taught them new skills. And there's
Interesting.
a great tradition of underground civilizations. You have Agartha, you have Shambhala, all those
Yes.
traditions of underground paradises, so to speak. And I think giants are linked to that as well.
That has always fascinated me, the inner earth civilization, and people that have been there and come back with these amazing stories, and they write books about it. I love that. I mean, it's just an incredible, way to think about the earth and that there could be a whole civilization living there that we really know very little about. But the giants may fit into this, right?
Yes, yes, very much so. And I think that like I said, to the people who were the dominant group of humans during the Bronze Age or the Stone Age, these survivors of this lost civilization who were tall in stature, just like they say the Jaredites were. I mean, they would be giants, and they would later be immortalized in tradition as gods and giants, and maybe even taller than they actually were,
Hmm.
and maybe even more powerful and more godlike than they actually were, because their innovation and their technology became legendary compared to the type of more inferior technology that the other peoples possessed at the time.
Now, do you think that most of them just died out, or do you think they
There were
basically started living
catastrophes. There were
underground?
catastrophes at the end of the last ice age, and I think that pretty much did the end of most of them.
Oh,
The
okay.
others, I believe, kind of were assimilated into the general population, where you see, like in Europe and elsewhere, there's tribes in Africa which are uniquely tall. So you have some of those remnants uh,
Mhm.
within the general human population, maybe not as tall as they once were, but you have that taller group of people in certain areas which still exemplify that ideal.
Mhm. Yeah, this is so interesting. Now, what about their intellect? You said that they seem to have a superior intellect. So they had
Yeah,
language, they were
they had
able to do
language
a lot of
and
things.
they were the bearers of language. They invented language. They invented writing and were the teachers. It's kind of like, in a way, when you look at it, you look at the ancient astronaut theory and this whole idea that aliens came from space, the Anunnaki, and they taught our ancestors. Well, my theory is kind of very similar, except it's not saying that they came from beyond. They came from here. They were just at an earlier time, an
Mm,
earlier cycle of human history. And they were humans, but they were a different type of human being. And they were us. A lot of our genetics can be traced back there. If you look, scientists have found in our own DNA, there are ghost signatures, signatures of vanished races, which we have no way of testing because we haven't had the remains. So if we can find the remains of one of these uniquely tall individuals,
mhm.
then we could maybe see in our own DNA the relationship there. Now we have found the Dragon Man recently, which is a Denisovan, and
And
he's
what is that?
a Denisovan. Back in the early 2000s in Siberia, they found a finger bone, and they tested it, the DNA, and found out that it was completely different hominid, a completely different member of the family of man. Recently, they found bones belonging, a large amount of bones relating to the Denisovans, and they are robust, tall individuals. By any means, they were giants. And the interesting thing is Andrew Collins and Gregory Little, they wrote a book, Denisovan Origins, where they touched upon this. And I would say that their theories are rather correct.
I'm saying
Uh,
so. But
I think
no,
they had good ideas in that book. I read it; it was really well done.
I'm familiar with the Denisovians, but you mentioned Dragon Man. What is that?
It's a Denisovan that was
It's
found
the
in
same
China.
thing, just another term.
It was the bones.
Ah,
Before it was just a finger bone and a DNA test, and that's all we knew about the Denisovans.
mhm.
But they found the bones, and it's uniquely robust, a huge jaw, a large head. So we're talking a creature which is probably twice or three times the size of an average man.
I can't imagine being, on the planet, a smaller stature, and coming across somebody like this that's 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall, and not only tall, but muscular, right?
Yeah,
These
yeah, and
giants were
it gets
thick.
even more interesting because there's also little people. You have Homo florensis,
What
which
is
is
that?
it's like a pygmy Homo erectus. It lived in Indonesia, and it was only 3 feet tall. They call it the Hobbit.
Oh, the Hobbit people, okay.
Yeah, 3 foot
Yeah.
tall. And the interesting thing is the New Zealanders have a tradition of little blonde creatures that were the little people. And they also have traditions of red haired giants, both living in New Zealand prior to their arrival, the natives there.
Now, you've studied all this and researched it very thoroughly. What are the things that you wish if you came across a giant, you could ask that giant? What are the questions you'd have?
I think I'd ask them how many civilizations existed before our own, before earliest mankind began writing down records of history. How many cycles had come before, and what truth is in the mythology that is in our cultures worldwide, whether
Mm.
it's Hindu or Norse or Celtic or indigenous American or African. What is true about it and what is not? And I would even like to shine on and say, is there any extraterrestrial involvement too?
Yeah, that'd be good to know
Yeah,
because certainly there's been a lot said about extraterrestrial involvement with Bigfoot.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of theories about it being a hybrid or being created by extraterrestrials or maybe being brought to the Northwest on a UFO and then disappearing on a UFO. So there's a lot of theories about that.
Mhm. So we're left with a lot of questions
Yeah.
about these beings and how they got here, what they were doing here. Now, some would probably want you to talk about the Anunnaki. Is that a part of the story?
Well, the Anunnaki, they're not really described as giants in Sumerian lore. They're what is described as a giant is Enki. No, excuse me, not Enki, Enkidu.
Mhm.
Uh, he was in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the companion of the king, and he was described as a Sasquatch-like giant
Mm.
who had enormous physical and mental abilities. But the Anunnaki, there's conflicting reports. Sometimes they're described as reptilian, sometimes they're described as bird-like, depicted as bird-like because they come from the sky. So to be associated with the sky, they're given depiction of having wings. I think that's more of an artistic depiction than a literal depiction. So the Anunnaki is more hard to interpret because it's so ancient and there's not a lot of material that's available. I know Zachariah Sitchin had certain conclusions, but his conclusions are not supported by mainstream science. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of questions about that. I try to keep an open mind. I believe that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. But like even in on my website, I bring up a lot of controversial things by other authors, but I try to either debunk it if it needs to be debunked, or I
Mhm.
offer an alternative and show
Mhm.
both sides of it and show where the evidence is and where the evidence is not.
Okay. Well, there are stories about teams of Green Beret and sometimes special forces being deployed to go after Bigfoot, and Bigfoot that has been kidnapping people, terrorizing people, killing people. So there are some reports on that. Have you heard any about that?
Well, I'm not really a Bigfoot expert, and I don't know too much about it. I'm actually, I'll be honest with you, I'm actually learning a lot from my colleague Todd, and he's
Mhm.
really um, kind of he's my mentor when it comes to Bigfoot. He is the guy. He is to me an expert, although he doesn't like being called an expert. But what he's done is he's merely adding to my argument about giants. I'm
Okay.
learning from him and I'm incorporating into my theory the stuff I'm learning about him. So my ideas will change, they'll evolve, and they will expand. I'm
Mm.
just really in, and I admit it, I'm in a learning process when it comes to the Sasquatch issue.
Have you read David Paulides' report on the DNA that they had tested of a Sasquatch? It was tested
No,
in a
but Todd has told me that there hasn't been anything conclusive as of yet.
You may want to take a look of that at that report because it seems pretty conclusive to me. I think what they found is worth discussing because I believe, if I'm getting this right, because I read it a while ago, that the male DNA was identifiable, or the female was not,
Oh,
or other way around. Don't quote me, everybody, but one of them was unidentifiable. So, and that was done by a world-class geneticist, I believe. So, this was not just an ordinary person or someone who wasn't trained. This was a highly trained
yeah,
person.
what irritates me is, especially about the Paracas skulls, is you have a lot of people like Jason Calavito, and I just don't like that guy. He has said that Brian Forrester did not have legitimate peer-reviewed people taking care of his DNA tests, and that's simply not true. He
Mhm.
brought verifiable, reputable testing of DNA of the Paracas skulls, and they did have verifiable Eurasian and Western Eurasian DNA. And so we know that is the case. And when unfortunately, a lot of archaeologists, when they're faced with a truth that interferes with their narrative, they will immediately dismiss it and just say, well, that's just not peer reviewed. And it might be peer reviewed, but they don't want you to know it. They want to spin it in their direction. Uh,
Absolutely. That's so sickening. I mean, we pay for these museums with our tax dollars, and they're lying to us about these kinds of things.
they are lying to us, and
Yeah,
they do it all the time.
they do it all the time. You're so right. There I don't know if you're familiar with the Akambaro figurines. but they are figurines that are unlike any others. They're not pre-Columbian. They don't look anything like that stuff in Mexico. But what is so fascinating about them is they depict humans walking with dinosaurs, riding
Yes,
dinosaurs. You've
I
seen them.
yes, I have.
Okay, and the museums here refused to put any of them on display because it
Yeah,
conflicted
they
with their
either say they're made up, and they don't even want to know. They don't even want to test them. They don't want to look at them. No, that
Mhm.
doesn't fit our narrative. We don't want to touch it.
Well, I know somebody who had them in their hot little hands. They brought them to a scientist in New York State. She took the creator gods, these little, figurines, and put them in a cage with white mice. And when she came in the morning, these, figurines had fluted ears.
Mhm.
The mice had fluted ears.
Hmm.
So this a remarkable transformation happened overnight with these figurines that museums totally rejected, didn't want anything to do with. Clearly, they have some effect on our material world. In fact, the person who had these figurines and brought them to the scientist, he loved the paranormal, absolutely loved it. He packed them away. They creeped him out so much that he just ended up putting them in boxes. So, there's something to it.
Yeah, I that was a big problem with me when I was at the university because I had a very open mind and I was very keen to the paranormal, but I was in a system that just loved to debunk. And
Mm,
so I had to really grit my teeth
mm,
through classes, through lectures, wanting to say what was on my mind, but having to acquiesce and write the things that the professor wanted me to write just to get a grade. It's not
right.
easy. It's not
No,
easy. You're an academic who believes, and you are faced with a narrative that you personally do not agree with, but you
right.
have to go along with it.
It's really challenging, and I admire your courage to tough it out in that environment, but now you're doing what you wanna do, which is writing about things and bringing it to the world. This is an important topic, and I think one of the most important pieces is you're pointing out how we've been lied to again. Here we are. I mean, it just seems like a running theme through everything from the government to disclosure, now to our own history. It's a challenge. Now, where are you gonna go from here? Are you yeah, I know you have the books out and coming out, so tell us about that.
Yes, I have a couple new books that I'm working on. One is called Bigfoot in the Ozarks, and it is all about firsthand accounts of Bigfoot locally here. Another one is called The Haunted Hollows, which is folklore. And then I have a couple ancient mysteries books. I have Giants of the East, which is giant legends and reports of real giants in East Asia. And we're talking Japan, Korea, China, Mongolia, Tibet, with some emphasis on South Asia, Southeast Asia. And
Now
then another one I'm planning to do eventually on the European giants, like the Celts, the Norse, the Slavs, and the Finno-Ugric peoples.
so do you think other cultures are as big on covering this up as the United States? Like, what about Asia?
Cultures are very open to, especially the East Asian cultures, have
That's what
always
I
been open
yeah.
to that, especially with the UFO phenomenon. They see it as just part of life. That yeah, they exist. There's UFOs out there. Same thing with the South Asians. It's only in the West that we wanna make a big deal about. I think a lot of that has to do with religiosity.
Mhm.
our religiousness kind of says, no, no, we're alone. We were created
But
special.
how does that tell me
And
more about that? Because what I don't understand how that challenges religion, just the fact that there were giants. How does it challenge religion?
well, it doesn't challenge religion. It
Mhm,
challenges uh, the notion of evolution. It doesn't challenge religion. It challenges the name of the progressive standard version of African origins with primitive ape-like beings descending up gradually over time. No catastrophes, no unusually tall humans, no anomalies, no extraterrestrials, all these things that would upset this uniformitarian worldview that a
mhm,
lot of the academics have established over a very long period of time. I mean, the religious aspect of it, if you look at the Book of Mormon, if you look at the Bible, if you look at the Talmud, you hear completely the opposite. You hear, cycles of time, pre Adamic races, the pre
mm,
flood period, the Nephilim. I mean, they're all over the place. Giants, the sons of God. You have hints at extraterrestrials like the account of Ezekiel and the wheels within the wheels. So in the Bible, yeah, it doesn't question religion at all. It questions more or less the religiosity of evolutionism.
mhm. I see. Yeah. It's but here you are exposing all of this. That must make you feel good.
It does. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm getting hunkered down in it and ready to go to battle for it. So
Right. Well, again, this the stories just don't go away, especially about Bigfoot encounters that are happening, and even Bigfoot that have been affected by fires, and that bodies have been found and transported. So many stories out there. Of course, who
we've
knows
got
what.
Minnesota Iceman. I'm sure you've heard about that.
Tell me about the Iceman. We want to know.
That was a number of years ago, back in the mid 20th century. There was a sideshow of a uh, like a Neanderthal or an ape man inside a block of ice, and it was supposedly discovered, and this guy had received it from a well-known movie director, and he had in possession of it, and he took around to circuses and paid money for people to come observe it, but over time it disappeared. Um, and there's a lot of different conspiracy theories about that, that eventually it was replaced with a fake because the original owner wanted it back and he wanted to hide it. There's people who link that movie maker with Howard Hughes. So there's a lot of different stories revolving around this mysterious sideshow attraction with this Neanderthal or ape like or Sasquatch like creature in a block of ice that was
Mm,
used. And it was taken all over the country and shown. And it was called the Minnesota Iceman. It's on my
yeah.
blog if
Oh,
you want to look at that. There's a whole article right there on it.
now, do people reach out to you with their own stories about giants and Bigfoot?
They do. They do. I get a lot of mail from my publisher, especially I go into the Book of Mormon quite a bit, and I get people in the church write me, and they say, "Oh, I didn't know you were a Mormon," and so they were very interested in learning more. And when I first was baptized and things like that. So yeah, I get a lot of that, but then I
Mhm.
get some people just writing me about extraterrestrials. Do you think there is an Anunnaki link to the giants and things like that?
Now, extraterrestrials is something that you're also very involved with. What's your take on that? Because we're getting a lot of mixed signals, especially from the government, who I stopped listening to as an authority. But it's interesting to hear what they have to say about the fact that it's not extraterrestrials, it's angels and demons, or it's interdimensionals. I say it can't. Why can't it be all of it? Why does
Yeah,
it
I
have to be
agree
one
with you.
thing?
Why not all of that? It's just like when they say, there's more than one type of extraterrestrial.
Right.
Why would there just be one type? Why would the only two races in this universe be Greys and humans? I don't think that that's real. I believe that there's multiple types, and I believe that humans probably descended from like the Nordic extraterrestrials, from the Pleiades. I kind of believe that we have maybe some genetic link to travelers from the stars. I don't believe necessarily that we were genetically engineered, more their descendants. I mean, like even in the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price and the Doctrine and Covenants, they talk about um, that we are not only the creation of God, but his biological offspring, which kind of hints to me kind of the ancient astronaut theory. I hate to say it, I don't hope that that's not heretical, but the idea that we're the offspring, that maybe we're the offspring of a greater being from the stars, that now we're seeing manifest itself in UFOs and visitations.
Yeah, I think for the government, our government, it's very upsetting to think about the fact that there is more than one entity, that it probably
Authority. That's the deal. It's an authority that could question their dominance and their
right.
control.
And it's not just coming from other planets, it's interdimensional for sure. There's
Yeah.
some from other planets, there's some from interdimensions.
Yeah.
And I think that for our government that is so used to being in charge and control of the skies and the water and the earth and everything else, I think it really scares them. And I don't think they understand a lot of it either. Yes, I believe they've reverse engineered a lot of technology that they found. Absolutely makes sense that they did that. But when it comes to really understanding the entire universal picture, I think they're at a loss.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%.
And it makes for interesting books, right? Definitely. But, we definitely have to have you back to talk about the next books that you're working on.
Yeah,
Um, with your Bigfoot book, how close are you to getting that completed?
it's coming out this month.
Oh, this month. Oh boy. Well, you are on top of it. That's great.
And
In the
also,
book,
the
give us
artist second edition is coming out this month too.
oh
You know,
gosh,
it's the
give
Ozark
us
section.
give us a teaser. Tell
Well,
us what you
I'll
found
tell you a
that
little
you
bit
were
about
surprised
towards the
about.
end of the book. I don't want it to be a spoiler, but they're growing humans in crop circles.
Say
Uh,
that again. What
they're
is this?
growing humans in crop circles.
Oh my god, this is the first time I've ever heard this. Okay. Tell me more. What does that mean?
Well, you just got to read the book, but it's pretty
I will.
grotesque. They're coming up and they're like these corn stalks, and they got these human faces growing out of the corn stalks. It's
Are
pretty
you
grotesque.
serious?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah,
Is this something new? I've
yeah,
never this is
yeah.
brand new
It's
that they're
new.
growing
It's
people
brand
in
new.
corn
It's never
stalks.
been done
Great.
before. Never talked about before, but yeah, they are doing this.
Has anybody photographed this?
No, no, this is all part of tradition and rumor, but I documented it, and it's a pretty scary book. There's a lot of, and
Really?
then the Bigfoot Ozark book is also very scary. Starts out with an encounter with me and my brothers, not in the Ozarks, but in my childhood land of Ocala, Florida, and with the skunk ape.
What happened? Did he chase you?
And it details the encounter, which was a violent encounter in which my brother lost his leg.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my god. I mean,
Yeah.
he lost it from an accident in running from this thing, or this thing actually
This thing
directly
actually swatted him with his claw and just
oh,
basically tore up his leg, and it
oh
was
my god.
amputated. Samuel.
And they couldn't save his leg.
They couldn't save his leg, so
That's horrific.
it is.
My
So
goodness.
this is a very scary introduction, and then it gets even worse as you read more into it. Talks about the unique smell of the Bigfoot in the Ozarks. How the
Mhm.
minute you get near it, that sour egg smell hits your nostrils.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Now tell us again the names of these books because 'cause they're gonna be out very soon so people can go buy them.
Bigfoot in the Ozarks, and the other
Okay.
one is Alien Harvest, The Ozark Connection, and then Haunted Hollows. And then after that, in a few months, we're going to come out with Giants of the East.
That's great. Now, let me ask you about your brother. Is he still with us?
Yes, he is.
What does he think about this? Does he think back and is he
He is very supportive. He always has been. I'm very close to my brothers.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, not my sister. My sister is in a different place. She lost a son,
Oh,
and she has never been the same since. And we don't really know what she's doing or where she is. She's
oh.
with us in her
Mhm.
mind. She's not with us, but I'm very close to my brothers, and we're still very much a family. And I live in a very closely knit community, not only with my brothers and my father, but also with my church family and also my university family. I'm still close to the college.
So you have a lot of support there. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But that's so traumatic what your brother went through. How did he recover from that? I mean, that's such a terrible
It's
thing.
like anything other. It was very difficult, but he recovered. Of course, he has an artificial leg, and that's just something that, fortunately, in today's time, it's not something that is hard to get, and it is something that allows you to have great mobility. There was a time when all you had was a wooden peg. It was much more traumatic to
Uh,
lose a leg than it is now.
and traumatic for all of you guys because you were with him when it happened,
We had a gun with us, so we were firing.
and it probably didn't do a thing, huh?
Didn't do a damn thing. So scared to do it. I don't even think we hit it. I think we missed it by a long shot because we didn't have our father with us. It was just us and our boys. We were out hunting. We were looking for squirrels, and then we were shooting things up and just having a good time, not really thinking much.
Mhm.
There was another incident too in Ocala where I found a giant sloth fossil, a claw from a giant sloth.
Oh my goodness.
That was a real turning point in my life, got me interested in paleontology. For a long
Yes.
time, I wanted to be a paleontologist.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Well, you have quite a fascinating path that you're walking. You really are. Now, one of our listeners wants to know, does Sam ever speak on the shows that you are on? Does he ever
Yeah,
come with you to the show?
private.
Very private. Yeah, understandable. Sure. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Very exciting life. Have you had any encounters with ETs?
No, I haven't.
Hmm.
I believe, but I've never seen them firsthand. So I would assume that eventually someday I will. I have no doubt. So I'm
Yeah.
waiting for that day.
Do you have, sightings in the Ozarks? I would imagine you do.
Yes, many, many. We have a lot. A lot of them take place. I mean, a lot of them take the form of anomalous lights, like
Mhm.
balls of light that just hover over the land. Not really craft, so to speak, but just these balls of light. And sometimes they call them will-o'-wisps, like they did in the old country.
Hmm. And have you, interviewed people that have had experiences for your book?
I've pretty much done my research in the library. I haven't done a lot of firsthand investigation as far as interviewing people. But there's like at the Boone County Library, there is tons, there's a wealth of information in their archives.
Mm.
It's all available there. I used it for the documentation on my last few books, which are coming out this month.
Congratulations. Good for
Thank you.
you. You know, I will mention again, we talked briefly on the phone earlier today. There was a red-haired giant in the Berkshire area where I am.
Mhm.
And apparently they did find a body, and it was truly a giant, and he also had 3 rows of teeth. Have you heard of that
I
before?
hear a lot, and this
Ah,
is connected to the Nephilim. They supposedly had that. It describes it in the Book of Enoch.
mhm. So
Okay.
these guys got around.
Yes,
They found one here.
and they
Oh,
also have I guess they each have an additional finger on each.
oh, okay.
So they have 7 fingers and 7 toes.
Oh my. Well, there was also a story where it was all over social media about a man who was hiking and he looked up and saw a stone door open and close. And he also talked about seeing a giant. And this was somewhere out west.
Mhm.
So there was some photographs and
Well, there is depictions on cave walls, like near Chaco Canyon, that creatures that look like giants, other creatures look like Sasquatch, other petroglyphs look extraterrestrials like Greys with UFO-like craft around them. So it's not just UFOs. You see a lot of depictions of giants, uh, insectoid type people, and the Sasquatch, all very common in petroglyphs. I have an article about it on ancientozarks.com.
well, we're gonna have to keep following your career and all of these incredible stories. I mean, this thing about the corn stalks, I'm gonna be thinking about this all night long.
Mhm.
That is, I have to say, you get the prize for the wildest story I've heard in years. That's incredible. My God, if you ever get pictures, please let us know. We wanna see them or video.
Oh, that would be something.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Oh my God.
Grotesque. It would be pretty grotesque to see these faces all bloodied and coming out of the corn.
Alive. If they're alive, that's even worse. Oh my God. Yeah.
Talking and crying
Okay. Oh,
out.
I'll be up tonight. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful to have you here. Thank you, FK. Congratulations on your book about giants and your 2 new ones coming out. Um, Great cover.
Thank you.
So, again, thank you. It has been a pleasure, and please let us know when you can come back and share the rest of these stories that you've written about in these other 2 books because they are pretty incredible,
Yeah,
and we like that. We
right.
like incredible. I'm sorry PK missed you tonight, but she'll be back for next time for sure.
Sounds good.
Yes, well, thanks again, and everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another great show. Until then, we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night.